couple more people that had responded that they were going to be coming, so they might just stagger in. Again, there's refreshments in the back. I opted away from the pizza. Since it's spring, I went for a little bit of a healthier option. So hopefully that's a nice change. I've just kind of been playing a video in the background. It's just faces of meth and kind of what drugs do. We have had an increase in heroin in the city here, and a lot of some of the faces and the facial features that you'll see and the changes, the stuff that we are starting to experience with people we are encountering and arresting. I do see some new faces here, so thank you very much. I am Sergeant Jessica Kirchner, for those of you that do not know me. Just really quick before we start, I'm going to introduce Officer Smichael. She is new to the Community Services Unit, and she is currently the officer that's working our juvenile offenders program. Officer Marshall is in the back. He's one of our patrol officers. You will probably see him on routine patrol out and about in the city. So tonight's presentation, we are going to go over our Safe Streets, which is an initiation and a collaborative kind of program that we have going on with several agencies in the state as well as the city. We have Beth Hart here, who is the coordinator, and Patty Norris, who is also a Safe Streets and a kind of a violence prevention initiative, a go-between between the courts, parole and probation, and Sean Rutherford from the Annapolis, I guess you're Annapolis Glen Burnie supervisor of parole and probation, and they're going to do a presentation on the Safe Streets. I'm going to touch a little bit on the heroin, what we are experiencing in the city and what we're seeing, and Corporal Miguez is going to go over some current crime trends and what we have going on. So again, I just had the video playing in the background, just kind of some stuff that we're encountering and the looks of the people we're starting to see. If you guys are all set, Ms. Norris and Ms. Hart. We'll close out. And start yours. Okay, this is Patty Norris and Beth Hart.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Again, thanks for coming out tonight. Beth and I are just going to go over the Capital City Safe Streets program that the Annapolis Police Department has had since 2007.
2008.
2008. Off to a good start.
Is it easier to see with the lights off or on? Dim? This?
Depends on which one.
That one's better? Okay. I just knew the sunlight was coming in.
Back in 2008 and prior, as you guys probably know, Annapolis was experiencing crime in alarming numbers. The governor, who was new to the area at that time, wanted to get the crime under control, so he went to his Office of Crime Control and Prevention and asked his director there to come up with a strategy. And that is where Safe Streets was born from. It's built upon the C-Safe model, if any of you are familiar with that. That was an location-based program where the offenders, according to where they lived, would be supervised. We switched it over, now it was where it was all offender-based.
So the governor's office came up with kind of a comprehensive strategy, and Annapolis City was lucky enough to receive the first funding to operate the program. Kind of the overriding mission is joint collaboration with all of the stakeholders in the criminal justice system. So kind of getting them all to one table and having them coordinate efforts and collaborate efforts and really talk. You know, it seems like pretty basic, like, you know, the county police and the city police would talk, and the state's attorney's office would talk with the police, etc. But that communication sometimes, and also with the Department of Probation and Parole, and sometimes that communication and coordination was lacking. And oftentimes we were following the same offenders. We were following the same subjects. They were under supervision with DPP or DJS, a juvenile services component as well. So that's where this comprehensive strategy was kind of dreamed up. And all the partnerships were formed. Here's a list of the partnerships that we have. For example, the Housing Authority in the city of Annapolis, really critical piece for us to work with to kind of, you know, encompass the whole city, encompass all, again, the stakeholders. We also, through the approach, we have two types of meetings. We have a monthly policy meeting, and that's kind of where all the decision makers, the chief of police comes, the higher ranking officials come, the mayor usually comes to that one as well. And that's where they make any policy decisions or see if there's anything that needs to be done with the Safe Streets program. We also have a bi-weekly meeting. It's called the HEAT Team meeting. And that actually is more of like the community service officers. Officer Schmeichel comes, the probation agents that are actually seeing the subjects, they come to that meeting. It's a lot of information sharing. HACA comes to that meeting as well. So again, a lot of information sharing between all the partners. They meet bi-weekly. That one I like to call is like more of a people-driven meeting. We talk about anybody that has outstanding warrants, any new offenders under supervision, that kind of thing. That way the police are there and they hear from probation and parole. The housing authority is there too. So
State's attorneys.
the state's attorney's office comes and updates us on any cases they may have pending as well. So again, like we said, in 2008 the city piloted the first program. And we'll show you in slides to come what the crime did after that. You can kind of see how the crime went down. And due to that, the success in Annapolis, they awarded the program next to Salisbury, because Salisbury was experiencing some high violent crime rates as well. And since then, in 2012, 5 more sites have been added, and a lot of the sites have actually come to the city of Annapolis for some technical assistance and training. They've come to our HEAT team meetings, they've come to the monthly policy meetings. Again, just sharing information and helping them get their programs underway too. And I think a lot of the cities have had similar experiences as the city of Annapolis. So now kind of going into the specifics of the program. So we kind of do focus enforcement. Through probation and parole, there's something called VPI offenders. And that stands for the Violence Prevention Initiative. And we monitor, in conjunction with community services or parole and probation, we monitor these offenders very closely. If they have a warrant out, we're quickly to hopefully go out and pick up anybody with an outstanding warrant. We monitor also by, in our record management system, in our system where anybody in the city is arrested, we have something called an alert. If somebody in the city is arrested, parole and probation and Department of Juvenile Service receives an immediate notification that the person was arrested. So again, it's just really good communication between the two. We put out a most wanted list. Any VPI offenders with outstanding warrants on our most wanted list. The most wanted list is on the APD's website too. And it runs in roll call basically all the time. So all the officers that are in there know who's wanted. So when they're in their car, if they see somebody they recognize from the roll call room, it's helpful. We also coordinate with the detention center up here on Jennifer Road. They send us a weekly release reports. And any offenders that have served time, not that kind of went in, say, for a theft or, say, a DUI or something and just spent one night there, but they served time, 18 months or less, we receive their names every Monday. And officers are required, as a directive from the chief, to go out and do what we call a knock and talk. So the officers, on Mondays, are given a report of all the releasees from the local county jail, and they go to the offender's house and basically just say, we know you're back in the community, we hope you're going to abide by our laws and follow the rules type thing. It's just kind of a check and balance type system. Other jurisdictions have done it, and I think our chief here did it in Baltimore as well.
Question. How often do they go and they're not there, do they report back?
Again, this is from the chief, they go back at least 3 times.
Okay.
And oftentimes if we go back and the subject is not there, they may get a cell phone number if the person that answers the door, whether it be a mother or a grandmother, uncle or whatever. But typically we've been very good at, and they go on different shifts too. So if the day shift didn't find them, then the next shift, the night shift will go at a different time. But it's been fairly effective. I do a lot of research on the addresses they give. I look in case search and see if there's a different address. So I give a couple different addresses if the last known is a bad address. Because oftentimes that is sometimes the case. And the offenders are required to give an address upon release. So, yeah. So they do go back.
If this is out of line and you're going to be covering this, just stop. When they do the knock and talks, it seems to me that this might be an opportunity for an offender to say, hey man, I'm having a heck of a time finding a job. Does this ever happen, and what can the police do, at least if they open up and say this, because I've heard this is one of the those difficult things
Right.
for people with a record.
Right.
Is finding a job. So if they come back out on the street, they're left with, well, I can't find a job, what do I do? Go commit crime again because I can't survive.
That's a good question. What we put on there too is if the person is under supervision, this has just been newly added to the release report, we put in their agent's number with probation or parole. And that would be a good place to start, would you say, Sean, in terms of job, looking for a job or trying to find employment for the next offender?
You know, unfortunately, the resources lack, you know, for employment for offenders with a criminal record. However, there is something down on West Street, and it's run by the Department of Labor Licensing and Regulation, and it's called One Stop. You know, their big office is in Glen Burnie, but they have a satellite office down here on West Street. And what that office allows is it helps individuals with reentry. It helps them with GED purposes. It helps them make a resume, and it knows employers that are willing to hire offenders that have records that they can make referrals to, so that individual is not wasting their time going to a employer that they're not going to hire.
Not only wasting their time, but getting frustrated
Yes.
with the negativity that they're running up against.
So that's one of our referrals that we make, and there's also a reentry specialist that works for Anne Arundel County. And she mostly spends her time out of the detention center, but we also supply her number to individuals that are just being released. And she helps with MVA IDs. But the problem that we see a lot of is that the individuals choose not to reach out. They choose, in their mindset, they choose not to reach out, you know. And as much as you continue to push them, you know, and a judge said to me one time, you know, I really want you to hold their hand and take them. Well, that sounds great, but when you have 150 people under supervision, you can't handheld it. You got to put the responsibility on them.
It just so happens I attended a meeting here in Annapolis about a month ago about offenders, and I have chronic fatigue syndrome, so I don't remember the title of it, but that's part of where this question came from. And from what you've just said, what kind of input might you have to wherever this would have to go to make it be accomplished, that don't wait till these people are actually back out on the street. But if you know a month or 6 weeks before that they look like they're on the path to be going back out on the street, get them somewhere to get their driver's license or get an ID or get them.
And the state does go to the detention center and also the state prisons and do the IDs prior to release. And there are a lot of reentry services provided at the state level. I'm not sure if there's that as much at the local level, but I know at the state level there is quite a bit. You go to the pre-release center and that kind of thing. So.
Thank you.
Just talk a little bit, we'll talk about this a little bit more, but we also have this call-in program. We've done it 3 times here at the City of Annapolis. That's where we kind of call in our worst of our worst offenders. We have probation and parole is here, the state's attorney's office is here, the U.S. Attorney's office, and they actually come in, the offenders come in here, and it's one of their face-to-face contacts with their agent. But they're kind of given a stern warning as to if they reoffend again with a gun and a drug, or either, they could be facing some serious time, some serious federal time. And oftentimes when you do federal time, you're not close to your home, you're further away, and your sentences, you mostly serve your entire sentence. So the U.S. Attorney's Office, they do an amazing job at coming in here and just giving a very stern warning. And we've seen some pretty good success with the program. We did, and we'll talk about the one guy that has reoffended. Any of the reoffenses we've had so far from our call-ins have been minor, have been driving on a suspended license or a trespassing charge. So the feds typically aren't going to take a case like that, but with drugs or guns, they're more likely to take. So again, coordinating efforts with the federal agency as well. So here's one guy I was going to talk about. Actually, I was going to let Jess talk about it. So first we'll talk about him too.